Senator Marco Rubio and other Republicans introduced a new bill to go and investigate the origins of the coronavirus, specifically saying that if China is not more cooperative, there will be sanctions towards Beijing coming out of the U.S. government. Very interesting bill. Let's take a look at the press release. This coming over from Marsha Blackburn, Senator Marsha Blackburn. She's a senator from Tennessee. Her, along with some other names you might remember, Marco Rubio, Tim Scott, John Cornyn, Rick Scott. We've got Kevin Kramer from North Dakota, Roger Marshall from Kansas, Steve Daines. We've got Chuck Grassley out of Iowa, Langford, Ben Sass, Nebraska, Tuberville from Alabama, and the list goes on and on. We've got a lot of people all signing on to this bill, the Coronavirus Origin, Validation, Investigation, and Determination Act of 2022. And can you see what they did there, how clever they are? The Coronavirus Origin, Validation, Investigation, Determination Act. It spells COVID. COVID. Well, that's very clever, as the Congress people are. But you can see here, there's actually a lot of very interesting things coming out of this. Marco Rubio here was very recently on the floor of the Senate, speaking out about a lot of stuff that he's unhappy about. And this is a new bill that is going to be working its way through Congress. And so let's see what's inside of it. This is, of course, Mr. Rubio for himself, along with many of these other co-sponsors. The bill is to impose sanctions and other measures in response to the failure of the government of the PRC, the People's Republic of China, to allow an investigation into the origins of the virus back at the lab in Wuhan. And this is what they're saying, that they're going to enact this in Congress. They're going to call it, the act here is the COVID Act of 2022. COVID, of course, spelling the acronym. And we can see the first section, Section 2, measures in response to the failure of the government of the People's Republic of China to allow an investigation. Measures of the U.S. government that are going to be in response of them failing to allow anything to be investigated appropriately. They say, listen, China, if by not later than the date that is 90 days after the date of this act being enacted, if the president is unable to certify that China has allowed a transparent international forensic investigation of suspect laboratories to commence, including in Wuhan, if the president can't confirm this within 90 days, the president shall, okay, not may, shall, no option, no choice, must do it, impose sanctions described herein. Sanctions go to individuals who hold positions of leadership in the state-run services, including affiliated branches and laboratories, individuals who are a party of the Chinese Communist Party, people in its council, Ministry of Science, the National Health Commission, the Chinese Center for Disease Control, and so on. Any of the big agencies over there, they're all going to be covered by this. Also, anybody involved in concealing the initial outbreak of COVID in the PRC, anybody restricting the release of information, anybody understating the severity of the outbreak or obstructing the international investigation, also included. This is also one of the sanctions allowed is going to prohibit federal funding for any joint research. So no federal money is going to be used for anything that's going to be joined by the Chinese. Going to be a hard break between these two countries, at least in terms of finances. So there's going to be a sanction there on the money, which will be a big spigot of funds. That includes all academic fields, all affiliated institutions, laboratories, universities, all technology enterprises based in the People's Republic of China that was created or funded by any of these investments. And number 3, another sanction is going to be to prohibit U.S.-based researchers that do receive federal funding from collaborating at all. So we're not going to fund projects that work with China, and we're not going to fund you if you work with China. And we're going to sanction any of the individuals who were involved in this, any of the leaders from Chinese agencies, and the list goes on. Termination. The requirements of the sanctions will terminate so that China can get out of this as soon as China allows a transparent forensic investigation to be conducted and concluded. And it's not just any investigation. We've got to have some requirements here. No restrictions on the scope or the subject matter of the investigation. Okay, so the Chinese can't tell people that you can come in here, but you can only look in this room, or you can only ask these types of questions. No, it includes everything. Without limitations on the access to the physical sites, to people that they want to talk to information that they want, to records about bioincidents, relevant molecular, genetic, epidemiological information, serological, virological data, all sorts of information they want access to. And if the Chinese interfere with it, that's not going to be considered a full and fair investigation. Some of these sanctions that can be described that might be allowed: asset blocking. President shall, not may, shall do this. If the president can't confirm that they've allowed a transparent investigation, these sanctions have to go into effect. Sanction assets, block them. Use the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to the extent necessary to block and prohibit all transactions of property interest. Anything that's coming within the United States or subject to the U.S. control. Property interests in property described. That saying that this property can be basically seized. Any individual that was described in subsection A, any family member that was involved in this, anything that the president designates for the individual that he thinks is appropriate for sanctions under that subsection counts. People are also, another sanction is going to be ineligibility for visas. So if you're a Chinese immigrant, somebody who wants to come over here and work on a visa, nope, not anymore. Inadmissible to the United States, not eligible to receive a visa, no documentation to enter. Not eligible to enter, current visas revoked. An alien previously described in subsection A1, visa revoked, denied entry, not allowed in. Immediate effect, this shall go into effect immediately, automatically cancel any other valid visas that are in that person's possession. Gone. Visas revoked. If this gets passed and signed into law, it's done. Implementation, the president may exercise the authorities to carry this out, and a person who violates or attempts to violate or causes a violation of this regulation is going to be sanctioned under the appropriate penalties. There are certain exceptions to this for intelligence agency activities. So the feds, the CIA, FBI, maybe they can sort of get around some of this stuff. It's not going to apply to them. But they are going to define a couple of terms for us. This is an interesting one. Gain of function research. The use of genetic engineering is part of this definition. The use of genetic engineering or nucleic acid synthesis methods is going to be part of the subject of the inquiry. Meaning they're actually going to go and ask about these questions. They're not going to be able to just say, oh, well, we don't think gain of function means what you think it means, and therefore we're not going to give you that stuff. They're defining it. It says, with respect to the study of viruses, it defines these things. The usage of serial passage methods to increase a pathogen's transmissibility. Any research conducted in a laboratory setting less than biosafety level 3 that involves all different types of pathogens as well. Carries on. It says, let's define a transparent international forensic investigation. Okay, remember that if we back up this bill, they told us that this goes into effect if China does not give us that, right? A transparent international forensic investigation. Well, what happens if China says, well, we did give you a transparent international forensic investigation, but you just don't think it was. So we got to define what that actually means, don't we? Here is what it says. It says it means it's an inquiry that is objective. It's data-driven. It's inclusive of broad expertise. It's subject to independent oversight. It's properly managed to exclude individuals with conflict of interest. Following things need to take place in order for this to be transparent. In order for the international community, in particular us here in the United States, who want to know, where did this come from? He says, here are the factors in order for it to count. Relevant research funding agencies, contractors, everybody involved, opens their records to examination. We got to be able to see what's going on there. It includes all form of data, epidemiological, virological, serological records. We want to know information about the earliest COVID case that was confirmed. Anything that was even similar but possibly misdiagnosed, anything in Wuhan in the fall and winter of 2019. Investigators can document the veracity and the source of the data, and they want to be able to analyze it and draw conclusions from it. International team also needs to be allowed to perform a full forensic investigation of the Wuhan Institute of Virology and all of the corresponding products. All other laboratories, everybody else involved who sort of worked in and out of there, needs to be examined. The team is allowed to review the biosafety level under which the bat coronavirus research was conducted and interview any and all personnel who had worked there previously or currently. All lab logs and notebooks kept by this woman, Dr. Shi Zhengli, Bat Lady, many people call her, or Bat Woman. She was there. Many experiments between 2007 and the date of this act. Unpublished work in Chinese and English. She's got a full and unaltered condition of examination. They want to see those documents without any manipulations. Access to everything that they examine, isolates, genetic sequences, databases, patient specimens, genomic editing, all of those results that came out from 2007 up until whenever this act gets passed. They've got 22,000 samples over there, 15,000 of which were taken from bats. Team also, they want to be allowed to examine the training procedures. How are these people trained? What was the laboratory procedure prior to the pandemic? What'd you do before, during, and after? Examiners want to be able to also analyze all the research data from 293 bat coronaviruses reportedly identified by Dr. Z, the Bat Lady. All other viruses from the abandoned copper mine in Mojang, specimens of rat G13. We've got the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They want them to disclose the content of all classified and unpublished studies from the People's Liberation Army about gain of function. They want the team to be able to identify all personnel for antibodies and other serological factors of past infection. So to go through the people who work there and actually test them for antibodies. The team give access to all records kept at Wuhan, all surveillance footage, audio, electronic logs, any employees leaving the facility, samples, physical facilities, sewer samples, unfettered access to the copper mine, and so on. They want this international team to be made up of a conglomerate of Western nations. We've got the US, Canada, UK, France, Netherlands, Germany, Australia, Japan, and India. Some of those are not Western. We've got the team includes molecular biologists, virologists. We've got experts in biosafety and biosecurity. They want the government of China to appoint their own experts to accompany and advise the team. But the government of the PRC has no authority to dictate the selection of team members and cannot obstruct the participation of any individual selected by the individual's government. The central, provincial, and municipal authorities of China may work with the team, but not impose any restrictions as this thing unfolds. That is the COVID Act of 2022. And man, that sounds very interesting because I would like to know a lot of the answers to those questions. We've been speculating for a long time that there's a lot more to the story. We made several videos about it here on this channel. What really happened at Wuhan? For a long time, you couldn't even ask that question. Now that you can, people are wanting to go one step further. Marco Rubio, the Republicans, they're saying China needs to be put in the cold until they give compliance here. Do you think there's any likelihood of this bill passing with as much power and influence as the China and the Chinese government have in the United States? Do you think that there's going to be enough politicians that are going to sign on to this to rock that boat? I'm not sure about it. I'd love to see what you have to say about it yourself. Leave a comment down below. I'd love it if you also gave us a like before you got out of here. And be sure you subscribe. Only 40% of the people who watch a lot of this content are subscribed. And so I hope you do stick around because I would love to see you on the next one.